to all you podumentary junkies that are still here for episode 4. Thanks for listening to The Spotlight, a podumentary style series where we share stories about average New Yorkers that, in the face of political and economic obstacles, are trying to make New York a better place to live. I'm your host, Rebecca Toscano, the podcast manager at Reclaim New York Initiative. And in this 4th episode, I'm going to be wrapping up our series about illegal tax map verification fees in Suffolk County on Long Island. In episode 3, we heard directly from Suffolk citizens about why they were against this seemingly small fee. For starters, it only appears small on the surface, but it accumulates in unexpected ways, and as we heard, negatively affects home buyers and homeowners, particularly lower income residents and those on fixed incomes. A $500 fee is a lot of money, especially if you're not expecting it. And in my opinion, a $500 fee for an illegal fee is simply maddening. And Suffolk citizens agreed. In this episode, we're going to talk more about how these fed-up citizens are continuing to fight against these fees with a lawsuit. Residents of Suffolk were not blind or apathetic about this issue. As you heard, they let their legislators know they were unhappy with this decision. They also shared their opinions with local media, wrote to and called their local representatives, rallied and attended community meetings about how to fight the fees, for crying out loud. But, as you also heard, the fees were put into effect anyway. And yet, these citizens did not give up. Over time, a few uncovered a very important detail, that the fees are actually illegal and considered an unauthorized tax by New York State because they brought in huge amounts of general fund revenue, to the tune of more than $60 million in 1 year. And, as it turns out, there's more than one way to make your government listen to you. In this case, citizens took civic engagement to the next level. They filed a class action lawsuit. But is a lawsuit actually making any difference? We heard in episode 2 just how complicated the Suffolk County budget problems are. How are they going to fix their huge deficit? And will this lawsuit just create yet another financial burden on an already strapped legislature? Well, the verdict is still out, according to some.
The basis of determining whether fees are illegal or not starts with the New York State Constitution and the delegation of taxation power to the state, and then what the state legislature delegates or authorizes local governments and municipalities to do as far as tax.
I also paid off another equity loan. I did not realize there was a fee attached to it. I'm sure I'll be owing another $550.50 to Suffolk County, which I find incredible. When does this stop? It just never seems to stop.
Filing a lawsuit really should be the last resort. You want to go to legislative hearings, you want to try to effectuate the change without having to engage lawyers because it's just a financial drain on both parties.
Our citizens need to become more engaged in their local government in a proactive way. It becomes very difficult for the government to remove, and this is just from a practical matter, not from a political matter, but from a practical matter, because of the budgetary process. It becomes very difficult for the legislature to remove fees that have already been in place.
All right, let's sort of go back almost to the beginning for just a minute. Who filed this lawsuit? When? And what does it call for? Well, it was officially filed on October 24th, 2017 by the Government Justice Center. Remember them? we heard from their executive director, Cameron McDonald, briefly in episode 1.
The Government Justice Center is a nonprofit pro bono litigation center based out of Albany, New York, that was established to take on litigation cases on behalf of taxpayers against the state and local governments where there may be fraud, waste, or abuse.
So in this case, the Government Justice Center saw abuse with the tax map fees and filed a lawsuit on behalf of 5 Suffolk citizens that wanted to take a substantial stand against this fee. Those residents are Elizabeth Sella, Winifred Essoff, John McCarthy, Carol Rogers, and Nicholas Accardi. We already heard a little bit from Elizabeth Sella in episode 1, but in this interview, which I'm about to play for you with News 12 Long Island, she talks a little more about why she's refusing to pay this fee.
Well, Suffolk tonight is accused of illegally collecting millions of dollars from county fee hikes. And tonight, a new lawsuit is demanding the county refund some of that money. News 12 Long Island's Eileen LaPalmer has the story.
That's not fair.
Elizabeth Sella of Melville is one of 5 homeowners suing Suffolk County over its recently instated mortgage recording fees. She recently paid off her home equity loan and then got this bill for $550 to be paid to the county. So you haven't paid this?
No, I have no intention of paying it.
Sella took out that home equity loan about 10 years ago to buy this car. She says at the time there was no mention of any county mortgage recording fee. That's because it didn't exist, at least not in its current form. As we've reported this year, Suffolk County did not raise the general taxes, but added a $300 mortgage recording fee and increased a tax map verification fee from $60 to $200. That fee applies to all mortgages, supplemental mortgages, refinancing, reverse mortgages, and home equity loans, both when you take out the mortgage or home equity loan and when you pay it off.
I have a problem with the county just going after certain people. When something doesn't strike me right, I have to go after it, and I did. Step by step.
All right. In this case, what exactly does this lawsuit or the summons filed by the Government Justice Center state? Well, many things, but for starters, it calls attention to the fact that the mortgage recording fees are illegal, and it provides evidence that legislators passed the fees knowing they were illegal. It asks the court to issue an order that declares the fees illegal, prevents the county from charging any such fees in the future, and finally, it asks the county to refund any of the mortgage document fees illegally charged to Suffolk citizens already in the past few years. Is it possible that this will actually happen? Well, we still don't know. If you know anything about lawsuits, you know that they're very long and complicated. I'll try to summarize what's occurred so far for you briefly, but you might have to bear with me. So, on February 5th, 2018, a little less than 4 months after the summons was filed, Suffolk County filed what's called an answer. In their answer, they denied all allegations that were put forth in the summons and stated, quote, that the fees at issue are a proper exercise of the county's municipal authority and power, end quote. The Government Justice Center was then given an opportunity to respond with what's called a Memorandum of Law in support of motion for partial summary judgment. This document is essentially a response to the county's denial of its illegal action. And it's supported with factual evidence from previous court rulings and New York state laws that prove just how these fees in question are illegal. That document was filed on April 13th, 2018, so just a little more than 2 months after the answer. Then, in August of this year, the Government Justice Center was required to file a summary judgment. This document declares that the facts of the matter are settled, and it asks the court to make a decision about the matter in question without resorting to a trial. From there, there's no official required timeline for the judge to make a decision or to define the next steps. So we're all just kind of waiting. You might be wondering, given how long this process is and all the back and forth of tedious documents between parties, what is the point of filing a lawsuit like this? After all, it's already been almost 3 years that these fees have been in effect now. The county has already made over $70 million from them and is potentially projecting millions more in income for 2019. Is a lawsuit actually going to make an impact on the ground for folks like Elizabeth Sella and the others? The folks who can't afford or refuse to pay that onerous $500 fee? Well, Michael Watt, a regional director here at Reclaim New York and a resident of Long Island, thinks sometimes a lawsuit has to be necessary, despite its complications, but maybe only as a last resort.
Well, filing a lawsuit is really should be the last resort. You know, you want to go to the legislative hearings, you want to try to effectuate the change without having to engage lawyers, because it's just a financial drain on both parties. But sometimes you have to do it. Sometimes you have to get their attention, you have to file the lawsuit, because now the municipality has to deal with the problem that you're presenting. You know, they have a legal obligation to address the situation, and by filing the lawsuit, you draw attention to the problem. Hopefully you can resolve it without having to go through a protracted lawsuit, because nobody wins outside of the attorneys getting paid, and God bless them. But it's a very effective way of getting their attention and forcing a solution to the table.
All right, and what do legislators themselves think of this lawsuit? I mean, many of them were warned about the potential of a lawsuit when the fees initially passed. Well, some legislators think that the lawsuit is necessary, even if only for holding the government accountable, and also letting the government know that the citizens are paying attention to what they're doing. Here's Legislator Trotta. He's the one who warned the legislature that the lawsuit could potentially happen.
You have to stop it. I mean, you can't just, it's like feeding a beast. You've got to be able to say, listen, you've got to stop. And you can't be doing things that are illegal. I mean, there are laws in place and there are procedures in place for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, unless we stop the spending, and what, you know, it's like, you know, if you're giving a kid money, you know, you keep spending, well, you got to stop. Just take it away. And you'll learn to live within your means.
Yeah. And
right now, this county, and a lot of counties, and the country is not living within its means. You know, you've got to be very, very careful, because, you know, the whole thing could collapse.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Suffolk County is approaching bankruptcy.
Many other legislators think that the lawsuit is just an unnecessary gadfly operation because it puts a further financial burden on a bare-bones budget. Here's a quote from the story we heard earlier on News 12 Long Island from one such legislator.
In a statement, a spokesman for County Executive Steve Bellone said, quote, "This is a politically motivated lawsuit filed by Albany insiders who lack any understanding on how government costs are apportioned, yet have no problem saddling taxpayers with the cost of fighting this completely frivolous complaint."
And some legislators fall somewhere in the middle. They want the government to be accountable for their actions, but hopefully in a way that doesn't result in such difficulty as a lawsuit. Here is legislator Tom Silmy with a little bit of that perspective.
There's no doubt that our residents need to become more engaged in the day-to-day activities of their local government. Whenever the county is entertaining some new regulation or some new fee that's associated with some issue, the folks who are in favor of it come out by the dozens and express to the legislature through public comment how important it is that we fund this service or we fund this department or that department. And unfortunately, the folks who end up getting hit hardest by these fees and these regulations don't respond until it's too late. And so our citizens need to become more engaged in their local government in a proactive way. It becomes very difficult for the government to remove, and this is just a from a practical matter, not from a political matter, but from a practical matter, because of the budgetary process. It becomes very difficult for the legislature to remove fees that have already been in place. So the best bet is to stop them from happening in the first place.
Okay, so what do you think? If you were in Elizabeth Sella's shoes, would you take part in filing a lawsuit, or would you just find a way to pay the $500 and move on? Or do you have the time and energy to pay attention to your local government in a way that you could raise your voice against something like an illegal fee before it happens in the first place? Well, it's a little late for that last option in Suffolk, but there are many county residents that are now aware and are finding ways to continue this fight. At the time that I'm recording this, in October 2018, there is yet another bill that has been proposed to the Suffolk County Legislature that would limit their future actions with raising fees. It's already been pushed once, and we'll see if it gets indefinitely tabled like the others before it. But Suffolk citizens are making their voice heard in advance this time. My colleagues at Reclaim New York Initiative have done a lot of the organizing around this effort, so I can share with you that a number of Suffolk citizens have called their legislators and spoke at public meetings and expressed exactly what they expect from their government regarding the vote on this issue. It's been nearly 3 years since this fee first passed, and Suffolk County has made millions upon millions of dollars illegally from this $500 mortgage recording fee. But Suffolk residents persist. As for the lawsuit, like I said, we're still waiting to see if it will make any difference. Will the judge officially declare the instance of these fees illegal once and for all? Will he require the county to refund any of those millions, putting the legislature further into debt than they already are? Furthermore, are other county governments in New York watching this story unfold in Suffolk? Are residents in other places wondering if any of their fees might be illegal, or how their government is bringing in revenue in difficult economic situations? I wish these were questions I could answer right now, but unfortunately, your guess is as good as mine. When we get a ruling on the class action lawsuit, and when we see how Suffolk legislators respond to this latest bill, we'll have a clearer picture. But sadly, our mini-series on illegal tax map fees comes to a somewhat open-ended close here. But we'll continue to document this issue on our website, so make sure you follow us at www.reclaimnynow.org if you want to stay updated on this issue and ways that you might be able to get involved. Thanks so much for listening to these first 4 episodes of The Spotlight. It's been a real pleasure to uncover this story with you, and we'll be back in action soon, tackling a new issue that affects average New Yorkers in more unexpected, but still monumental ways. Until then, keep fighting those fees. Thanks for listening to the Spotlight Podumentary series. Please take a moment to rate the show and/or leave a review on iTunes. If you email me and let me know you've left a review, we will send you a free Fight the Fees lawn sign. My email address is Rebecca, that's Rebecca with 2 C's, at reclaimnynow.org. Also, I'd love for you to join this conversation. So feel free to email me questions or comments about anything you've heard about this topic. You could also find us on Facebook or tweet at ReclaimNYNow with the hashtag FightTheFees. Thanks so much for listening, and we hope to hear from you. If you didn't know, Reclaim New York Initiative is a nonpartisan, nonprofit, registered 501c4 organization that works to empower all New Yorkers with information and tools to make sure government officials understand that they work for the people. You can find out more about Reclaim New York Initiative and these illegal fees by visiting www.reclaimnynow.org.